My name is Victoria Alexandra Monroe. I'm 31 years old, and I'm speaking to you from downtown Manhattan. I request you to like the video, comment where you are listening this from, and subscribe to the channel. If you are listening to this, I want to tell you something. Never assume you understand someone's story based on what you can see, because the greatest treasures are often hidden, and the greatest loves are sometimes the most dangerous. So let me start at the beginning. Not my beginning, but hers. My mother, Catherine Elizabeth Monroe, was one of the most powerful women in America, and almost nobody knew it. She ran Meridian Global Industries, a $300 million technology and innovation company that had quietly revolutionized supply chain management, artificial intelligence applications, and sustainable energy solutions. The company employed over 8,000 people across 12 countries. It had government contracts, it had Fortune 500 clients. It was, by any measure, an empire. But my mother was invisible. She never did interviews, she never attended industry galas, she never appeared at conferences or tech summits. She was not on the covers of Forbes or Fortune or Fast Company. The world's most prestigious business magazines didn't even know her name. This was intentional. "Victoria, my darling," she told me when I was 18 years old, sitting in the study of our Upper East Side townhouse, "there is a certain kind of freedom that comes from being unknown. When people don't know you have money, they can't steal from you. When they don't know you have power, they can't try to manipulate it. When they don't know who you are, they have to get to know who you actually are." My mother was extraordinarily beautiful. She was tall, nearly 5'9", with the kind of naturally elegant posture that came from years of ballet as a child. She had deep brown skin that seemed to glow from within, high cheekbones, and eyes that were so dark they looked like black diamonds. Her hair was luxuriously long, reaching past her shoulders, always perfectly styled but never ostentatiously so. But what struck people most about my mother was her presence. She had a way of walking into a room and making everyone else seem to fade into the background, not through loudness or flashiness, but through a quiet, absolute confidence that suggested she knew something everyone else didn't. She had built Meridian from nothing. Her father had been a software engineer, her mother a high school mathematics teacher. Neither had been wealthy, but both had been brilliant. My mother inherited their minds and added something else: a ruthlessness, a strategic vision, and an almost supernatural ability to see around corners. At 22, fresh out of Harvard Business School, she started Meridian with 2 colleagues and $50,000 of borrowed money. Within 10 years, the company was worth $100 million. Within 20, it was worth $300 million. And she had never, not once, let me take it for granted. "Wealth is a responsibility," she told me constantly. "It comes with the weight of knowing that thousands of people depend on your decisions. It comes with the understanding that one wrong move could devastate their lives. It is not a luxury, it is a burden, and it is not something to flaunt." My childhood was unusual. We lived in one of the most expensive neighborhoods in Manhattan, but we didn't live like the other wealthy families around us. We didn't have a staff of servants. We had a housekeeper who came 3 times a week. We didn't have a driver. My mother drove herself, often in a practical BMW instead of the Rolls-Royce that could have been ours. We didn't attend the kinds of exclusive private schools that the other wealthy families' children attended. I went to a rigorous public school where my mother donated money anonymously and served on the board under an assumed name. If people know who you are, they will treat you differently. They will be false. They will want things from you. I want you to know people for who they really are, and I want people to know you for who you really are. So nobody knew we were wealthy. My classmates thought we were comfortably upper middle class, nice apartment, nice clothes, but not ostentatiously rich. I had friends from all kinds of backgrounds, and we genuinely connected because there was no pretense about money between us. My mother was equally anonymous in the business world. She ran Meridian from behind the scenes. She had a CEO who was the public face of the company, a brilliant man named David Chen who was charming and articulate and entirely dependent on my mother for strategic direction. She had a COO, a CFO, and various other executives, but the real power, the real vision, the real genius, that was all my mother. She showed up to the office at unusual hours. She never had her name on a door. She was listed on the website as Chief Strategic Advisor, a deliberately vague title. Most employees didn't know her full name. Many wouldn't have recognized her if they passed her in the hallway. She was a ghost running an empire, and she was the most content person I have ever known. Growing up with a mother like that, I learned to want very little. I wasn't materialistic. Why would I be? I had seen firsthand that money didn't buy happiness. If anything, it seemed to buy complications. My few close friends were the people who liked her before they knew she was wealthy. Her college roommate, a woman named Sarah who worked as a therapist, her childhood best friend, a man named Marcus who was an architect, and a woman named Eleanor who had been her mentor at Harvard. Those relationships were real, the ones with business associates, the ones with people who wanted something from her, the ones who were impressed by her power, those were transactional. My mother treated them professionally, but she never confused them with actual connection. I learned this lesson early. I learned to value people for who they were, not what they had or what they could do for me. I learned to be genuinely kind because kindness cost nothing and meant everything. I learned to be intelligent, independent, and self-sufficient, and I learned to be cautious about love. Love is the most dangerous force in the world, my mother told me when I was 16, because when you love someone, you give them the power to hurt you in ways that nobody else can. You have to be very, very careful who you give that power to. I took this advice seriously. Throughout high school and college, I went to Columbia University, like my mother before me. I was careful about relationships. I dated, but I didn't let myself fall too deeply. I kept part of myself protected, reserved, unavailable. My mother never pressured me to get married or settle down. She would occasionally say things like, "When you find the right person, you'll know." But she never made it seem like finding the right person was my primary purpose in life. She encouraged me to build my own career, to develop my own interests, to create my own identity independent of any romantic relationship. I listened to her. I graduated from Columbia University with a degree in business administration and a focus on sustainable development. I went to work for a nonprofit that focused on environmental conservation in developing nations. It wasn't glamorous or lucrative, but it was meaningful. My mother approved. "You're building your own foundation," she said. "You're doing it based on your values, not on money. This is how you build a life that belongs to you." I was happy, I was fulfilled, I was independent. And then I met Marcus. I met Marcus Sterling at a charity gala, one of the few social events that my mother occasionally attended, usually because a friend was involved or because it was for a cause she cared about. This particular event was benefiting an environmental nonprofit, so my mother had encouraged me to attend. I was there working the event, helping with registration and logistics. Marcus was there as a guest, invited by a colleague of his from the investment firm where he worked. He was handsome in a polished, sophisticated way. Tall, about 6'2", with rich brown skin, perfectly styled hair, and a smile that seemed practiced but still effective. He wore a suit that probably cost more than my monthly salary, and he moved through the room with the ease of someone who was very comfortable with himself and with wealth. He noticed me almost immediately. "You look like you actually care about this event," he said, approaching me with a champagne flute in hand. "Most people at these things are just here to be seen." "I do care," I said. "I work for an environmental nonprofit. This cause is personal to me." "That's refreshing," he said, extending his hand. "Marcus Sterling. I'm an investment manager at Blackstone." "Victoria Monroe," I said, shaking his hand. He held my gaze for a moment longer than necessary. "Are you hungry? There's a private dinner for major donors upstairs. I have access. Would you like to join me?" I should have said no. I had been trained by my mother to be skeptical of charming men with money and confidence, but there was something about Marcus that seemed different. He wasn't trying too hard. He was genuinely interested in my work with the nonprofit. He asked thoughtful questions. He listened to my answers. So I said yes. The dinner upstairs was elegant but not ostentatious. Marcus was interesting. He had traveled extensively. He was knowledgeable about art and music. He had a dry sense of humor that made me laugh. "I'd like to see you again," he said at the end of the evening, "outside of charity galas. Would you be interested in that?" "I'd like that," I said. And so we began dating. Those first months were magical. Marcus took me to restaurants I would never have gone to on my own, Michelin-starred establishments where the chef knew his name. He took me to private showings at art galleries. He introduced me to his friends who were all successful, all wealthy, all impressed by him. But there was something about the way he talked about money that bothered me. It wasn't that he talked about it too much, it was that he talked about it in a way that suggested it was the only thing that mattered. "That acquisition is going to make me another $2 million, he would say, and I could see the genuine satisfaction in his face. Not satisfaction about the business opportunity or the strategy, satisfaction about the money. "I'm thinking about upgrading to a penthouse in Tribeca. It's only $15 million. It's a good investment." He asked me about my family's wealth almost immediately. Where did my parents make their money? What was my net worth? Did I have trust funds? I deflected. I told him that my mother worked in business, that we were comfortable, that I preferred to make my own way in the world rather than rely on family money. He seemed to accept this, but I noticed he kept asking variations of the same question. After 3 months of dating, he took me to dinner at a private club in Tribeca and proposed. He didn't ask, he announced. "I want to marry you, Victoria," he said, pulling a diamond ring from his pocket. "I think you're beautiful and interesting and smart. I think we could have a really good life together. Marry me." It wasn't a question, it was a statement of intent. I should have noticed that. I should have realized it was a warning sign. But I was in love, or I thought I was, and love makes you ignore things that seem important in the abstract. "Yes," I said, and he slid the ring on my finger. My mother was quiet when I told her the news. "How long have you known him?" she asked. 3 months, I said. "And how well do you know him? Does he know about the family's wealth?" I told him we're comfortable, but not that we're particularly rich. I wanted him to like me for me, not for money. My mother looked at me for a long moment. I could see her doing calculations in her head, assessing, analyzing. "Victoria," she said slowly, "I want you to be happy. Truly, I do. But I need you to do me a favor. Before you marry this man, I need you to let me investigate him. Let me have someone look into his background, his finances, his character. Will you do that?" "Mom, that's weird," I said. "I trust him." "Trust is wonderful," my mother said, "but it's not a substitute for knowledge. Please, do this for me." I agreed, more to humor her than anything else. A week later, my mother asked me to meet her in her study. This was unusual. My mother rarely discussed business with me, and her study was her sanctuary. "Sit down," she said quietly. I sat. "Marcus Sterling is not who he claims to be. Or rather, he is who he claims to be professionally, but his personal finances are a disaster. He has massive debts. He's been sued twice by women he dated over money disputes, and he has a very specific pattern. He pursues wealthy women, proposes quickly, and then either gets them to loan him significant amounts of money, or he divorces them and takes what he can in the settlement." I felt the room spin. "How did you find this out?" I asked. "I hired a private investigator," my mother said. I had him dig into Marcus's background. Victoria, this man proposed to you 3 months after you met. He's been asking you about your family's wealth. All of this is consistent with his pattern. But he seemed so genuine, I said, my voice small. That's what makes predators effective, my mother said gently. They seem genuine. That's the con. They're incredibly good at making you feel special, making you feel chosen. I should have broken up with him immediately, but love, or what I thought it was, is a powerful thing. I convinced myself that my mother was being paranoid. I convinced myself that Marcus's past was his past. I convinced myself that he really did love me. I was 24 years old and stupid. I married Marcus anyway, 6 months after he proposed. We had a beautiful wedding, not ostentatiously expensive, which would have attracted attention, but elegant and intimate, about 150 guests. My mother gave me away, her face carefully neutral throughout the ceremony. Marcus's family was there, his parents, his siblings. They seemed nice enough, though I noticed they made a lot of comments about the quality of the venue and the expensive flowers and the exclusive location. After the ceremony, my mother hugged me and whispered, "If things go wrong, you call me. Do you understand? You call me immediately." "Things won't go wrong," I said, but I could hear the doubt in my own voice. Marcus had wanted to move in together immediately after the wedding, and I had suggested we find a new place together, somewhere that was ours, not his expensive bachelor pad in Tribeca. He agreed, and we bought a beautiful townhouse in the Upper West Side, near where my mother lived. The first few months of marriage were strange. It wasn't bad exactly, but it was different from dating. Marcus had an intensity about money that was almost obsessive. He was constantly checking his investment portfolio. He talked about market moves and wealth accumulation and real estate appreciation. I tried to talk to him about the nonprofit work I was doing, about the communities we were helping, about the environmental impact of the projects we were undertaking. He would listen politely, but I could see his mind was elsewhere. "You're making decent money at the nonprofit?" he asked one evening. "About $75,000 a year," I said. He nodded. "That's good. We can use that for household expenses. My income is for investment and growth." It was the first time I realized he was thinking of our finances as separate, even though we were married. Then, about 8 months into the marriage, I noticed he was spending a lot of time on his phone. He would step out of the room to take calls. He would come home late with explanations about work emergencies or client dinners. And he had become distant. He didn't want to spend time with me. When we were together, he was irritable and short-tempered. He complained about things constantly. The townhouse wasn't nice enough, my family was weird because they weren't flashy, my job was beneath him. One evening, I was cleaning up in the bedroom and his phone fell out of his pocket. It lit up with a text message. I wasn't trying to snoop, but the message was visible on the screen. "Can't wait to see you tonight. Tell her you have a work emergency. I miss you." The message was from a contact labeled E. I felt my heart stop. I should have confronted him immediately, but I was in shock. Instead, I waited. I set up alerts on my credit card accounts. I started checking his location periodically through the shared phone app we had set up. And I discovered that Marcus had been having an affair with a woman named Elaine, a wealthy real estate developer who had recently inherited a significant fortune from her father. When I finally confronted him, he didn't apologize. "You're not satisfying me," he said coldly. "Elaine understands my ambitions. She's accomplished, she's beautiful, and she's rich." "I'm rich," I said quietly. But it wasn't true. I wasn't rich. My mother was rich. I was comfortable, independent, but not actually wealthy. "You're not rich," Marcus said dismissively. "Your mother is rich. You're just a woman who works for a nonprofit. You're not interesting. You're not accomplished. You're not what I want." The cruelty of it took my breath away. "I want a divorce," I said. And that's when Marcus became violent. I don't like to dwell on this part, but it's important to the story, so I'm going to tell you what happened. When I said I wanted a divorce, Marcus's face went dark. He grabbed my arm. "You're not divorcing me," he said, his voice cold and controlled in a way that was somehow more terrifying than if he had been shouting. "You're going to stay in this marriage, and you're going to make it work." "Let go of me," I said, trying to pull away. He twisted my arm. "You think you can just leave me after I've wasted 8 months on you? You need to fix this." "I can't fix infidelity," I said, and he hit me. It was the first time. A backhanded slap across the face that sent me staggering backward. I fell into the bedpost and felt pain explode across my shoulder. I was too shocked to cry immediately. I just stood there, touching my face, unable to process what had happened. "That's what happens when you don't listen," Marcus said. "Now, are we going to stop talking about divorce, or do I need to make this clearer?" I went to my mother the next morning. I told her everything, the affair, the violence, all of it. I showed her the bruises on my arm and my shoulder. My mother didn't say, "I told you so." She just looked at me with a sadness that was somehow worse than anger. "We need to get you away from him, immediately," she said. "He won't let me leave," I said, "and if I try, he gets violent." "Then we'll be strategic," my mother said. She picked up her phone and called a number. "I need a divorce lawyer, the best one you have, and I need to consult with a domestic violence expert. My daughter is in an abusive marriage." Within hours, my mother had assembled a team. A divorce lawyer named James Morrison, who specialized in protecting assets and fighting domestic abuse cases. A therapist who specialized in trauma. A security consultant who recommended installation of cameras throughout the townhouse. But there was one more thing my mother did, and this was the part that would eventually change everything. "I want you to document everything," she told me. "Every threat, every time he hits you, every time he demands money. I want records." "Why?" I asked. "I just want to leave." "Because we're going to need evidence," my mother said. "And because I want to make sure that when this is over, you are protected and he is punished." After I told Marcus I wanted a divorce, his behavior became more controlling. He started monitoring my movements. He would call me constantly to ask where I was, who I was with, what I was doing. He would get angry if I didn't answer immediately. He demanded that I ask my mother for money. "Your mother is rich," he said. "I want a $10 million loan. Tell her to transfer it to my account." "No," I said flatly. "I'm not asking my mother for money, especially not for you." He hit me again, harder this time. I reported it to the police. I got a restraining order. He violated it the next day. My mother hired security to follow me, to keep me safe. She had lawyers file paperwork to get him arrested for the violations. And then Marcus made a threat that changed everything. He cornered me in the townhouse one evening. He still had a key, and the security team couldn't be with me 24/7. "If you don't drop the divorce and get me that money," he said, his face close to me, "I'm going to kill you, and then I'm going to kill your mother. Do you understand me?" I understood, and I believed him. I called my mother immediately. She called the police, the FBI, and her security team. Marcus was arrested and charged with making terroristic threats. He sat in jail for 2 weeks before he made bail, and while he was in jail, I filed for divorce. The legal process was contentious. My lawyer fought to protect my assets. We argued that the townhouse was mine, that our accounts should be separated, that I owed him nothing. Marcus's lawyer argued for spousal support, for half of the value of the townhouse, for continued financial entanglement. But we had documentation. We had the police reports from the assault. We had the threat of death. We had cameras that had captured him hitting me. And we had my mother. My mother gave a deposition that was extraordinary. She explained that she had hired investigators to look into Marcus's background before the marriage. She documented his pattern of predatory behavior. She presented evidence of his financial desperation, his failed previous marriages, his inability to succeed in his career without manipulating women. The judge was not sympathetic to Marcus. The divorce proceedings were ongoing when my mother got sick. She went into the office one morning and came home complaining of feeling tired. Within a week, she was in the hospital. The diagnosis was cancer, advanced pancreatic cancer. "How long?" I asked the doctor, though I already knew the answer. "If she's lucky, a year. If not, months." My mother was not lucky.
During this time, Marcus's behavior changed in an interesting way. He stopped pushing for money. He stopped making threats. He actually became almost solicitous. He would call and ask how she was doing. He would say things like, "I hope Catherine gets better soon." It took me a while to understand what was happening, but I finally figured it out when I overheard him on the phone with his lawyer. "How long does she have?" he was asking. "No, I'm asking because once she's gone, Victoria will have nothing. No income from the nonprofit, no family support, no assets of value. The settlement will be much easier to negotiate once she's desperate." My blood ran cold. He was waiting for my mother to die. He was counting on her death to make me vulnerable, to make me desperate, to make me more willing to settle the divorce in his favor. I told my mother what I had heard. She laughed, a thin, painful laugh from her dying body. "He has no idea," she said. "No idea about what?" I asked. "About who I really am," she said. "Victoria, there's something I need to tell you, something I should have told you a long time ago, but I was trying to protect you. I'm going to tell you now because soon I won't be able to, and you need to know." She told me about Meridian Global Industries. She told me about the $300 million valuation. She told me about the empire she had built quietly over 3 decades. And she told me that I was going to inherit it all. "I have no other children," she said. "My siblings have their own wealth. I've set up trusts for them, but the company is yours, Victoria. Everything is yours, and you're going to be one of the richest women in America." I was stunned. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked. "Because I wanted you to have real relationships," my mother said. "I wanted you to know that people loved you for you, not for your money. If you had known the truth, you would have questioned every relationship, every friendship, every professional opportunity. You would have spent your life wondering if people liked the real you or just your bank account." "But Marcus," I started. "Marcus is a parasite," my mother said flatly, "and he's going to be in for a shock." My mother died on a Tuesday in March. I was holding her hand when she went. Her breathing just became shallower and shallower, and then it stopped. I called my mother's lawyer immediately. Within hours, he was at the house with documents and information about the will and the company. Marcus showed up that evening, ostensibly to pay his respects, but I could see the calculation in his eyes. He was already thinking about the settlement. He was already thinking about what he could get now that my mother, the woman he clearly saw as my only source of support, was gone. "I'm so sorry about your mother," he said, but his tone was perfunctory. "This must be a difficult time for you." "It is," I said. "We should probably expedite the divorce settlement, given the circumstances. I'm sure you have a lot to deal with right now, and we can probably come to an agreement quickly. I'm willing to be reasonable." Reasonable, in his mind, probably meant asking for far more than he was legally entitled to, knowing I would be grieving and vulnerable. "Let me talk to my lawyer," I said. The next morning, my mother's will was executed. As the primary beneficiary, I inherited 95% of Meridian Global Industries, the Manhattan townhouse where my mother lived, worth approximately $40 million, investment portfolios totaling approximately $150 million, real estate holdings in various countries totaling approximately $100 million, cash accounts totaling approximately $50 million. In total, I inherited approximately $320 million, and I became the new CEO of Meridian Global Industries. The company's board had already voted on this before my mother died. She had set it up that way, so there would be no succession confusion. I was officially appointed CEO effective immediately upon her death. My lawyer advised me not to go public with the information immediately. He said, "Let the dust settle. Let people mourn your mother. Then we'll make the announcement." But of course, it leaked. By that evening, it was in the financial news. By the next morning, it was everywhere. Hidden tech empire revealed. Catherine Monroe's daughter becomes CEO of $300 million company. Manhattan heiress Victoria Monroe takes over Meridian Global Industries. From nonprofit worker to billionaire, the extraordinary story of Victoria Monroe. My phone exploded with calls and messages. Former colleagues reached out wanting to reconnect. Distant relatives I barely knew came out of the woodwork. Media outlets wanted interviews. And Marcus called me. "Victoria," his voice said, his voice completely different from what it had been, suddenly warm, suddenly interested. "I heard about your mother, and I also saw the news about the company. That's incredible. We need to talk." "We don't need to talk," I said. "Baby, come on," and the casual use of the term of endearment, something he hadn't used in months, made me feel sick. "We made a mistake. We rushed into things, but now everything is different. We could make this work. With your resources, we could do amazing things together." "No," I said, and I hung up. He called back immediately, and again, and again. He showed up at my mother's townhouse, now my townhouse, where I was grieving and trying to understand my new reality. "Please," he said through the security gate that the guards wouldn't allow him to pass, "please just talk to me. I love you." He didn't love me. He loved what I could provide him. There was a fundamental difference, and I finally understood it. Over the next week, Marcus tried everything. He called my lawyer, claiming that as my husband, he had a right to information about my inheritance. He showed up at Meridian Global Industries, claiming to be a shareholder and demanding a meeting with me. He contacted media outlets, claiming that our marriage was loving and that I was misrepresenting the situation in my grief. He hired a lawyer to fight the divorce settlement, arguing that as my spouse, I was entitled to a significant portion of my assets. He even showed up at my mother's funeral, a private ceremony that was invitation only, and I had to have security remove him. But the most pathetic moment came about 2 weeks after my mother's death. I was at Meridian's headquarters, meeting with the executive team to introduce myself as the new CEO. I was in a boardroom on the 48th floor, presenting my vision for the company's future, when Marcus walked in. Security hadn't stopped him because he still had enough pull with some lower-level employees to get past initial checkpoints. "Victoria," he said, approaching the table, "can we talk, privately?" The entire room went silent. "No," I said, calmly. "Security, please escort this man from the building." "Victoria, please," he said, desperation in his voice. "I made a mistake. I was angry. I was confused. But I love you. I want to be with you." "You want to be with my money. There's a difference, and I'm not interested in either." As security led him away, he called back, "You'll regret this. You'll realize you need me." I didn't regret it. I didn't realize I needed him. What I did do was finalize the divorce quickly. My lawyer negotiated a settlement where Marcus received $500,000, a generous amount that was far more than he deserved, but I was willing to pay it just to get him out of my life permanently. He signed, he took the money, and he disappeared. I heard later that he tried to trade on his connection to me. He told people he was consulting for Meridian, which was a lie.
He tried to get jobs at other investment firms by claiming inside connections, which didn't work. He tried to rebuild his reputation as an investor with the $500,000 settlement money, but he didn't have the talent or the judgment to succeed. Within 2 years, he had blown through the money and was back to where he started, desperate, angry, and looking for another woman to manipulate. I didn't watch his decline with satisfaction. I watched it with a kind of sad clarity. He had had an opportunity to be a good person, to be someone I could have genuinely loved, but he had chosen greed instead. Taking over Meridian Global Industries was the most challenging thing I've ever done. I had to learn the business quickly. I had to understand the corporate structure, the client relationships, the financial models, the strategic vision. I had to prove to the board and to the employees that I was capable, not just the boss's daughter, but a legitimate leader. My mother had left me extensive notes and documentation about the company's operations and strategy. Every evening, I would go through files and understand the decisions she had made and why. What struck me was how brilliant she was. She hadn't just built a profitable company, she had built a company with purpose. Meridian wasn't just making money, it was developing technologies that were making the world more sustainable and more efficient. She had given me the tools to succeed. She had given me the company. But what she had really given me was a model for how to be powerful without being loud about it, how to be successful without needing to be seen, how to accumulate wealth while maintaining integrity. I restructured the company in ways that reflected my values. I increased salaries for entry-level employees. I started a scholarship program for kids from low-income backgrounds to study STEM. I shifted some of our focus toward environmental technology and sustainability solutions. I increased the company's charitable giving from 2% of profits to 8%. My CFO nearly had a heart attack. "You're cutting into profitability," he said. "We're worth $300 million, I said. "We can afford to care about things other than profit margins." Under my leadership, Meridian's valuation didn't decrease, it increased. Investors, particularly millennials and Gen Z investors who cared about ESG investing, were excited about the company's new direction. Within 3 years, the company was valued at $450 million. I was 28 years old and running a $500 million company. 3 years after the divorce, I was attending a charity gala in Manhattan, one of the same type of events where I had met Marcus, though this time I was attending as an honored guest and major donor. The nonprofit was working on environmental conservation, the same kind of work my mother had always supported. I was standing near the silent auction, reviewing pieces, when I heard a voice behind me. "Victoria." I turned, and there was Marcus. He looked diminished somehow. His suit was nice, but slightly worn. His face was thinner, his eyes tired. He looked like a man who had been in a fight and had lost. "Marcus," I said coolly, "I'm surprised to see you here." "I wanted to talk to you. I've been waiting for an opportunity." "There's nothing to talk about," I said. "We're divorced. We have no further connection." "I know," he said, "but I wanted to apologize. I wanted to explain." "You don't need to explain," I said. "I understand perfectly. You were using me. When you thought I had limited resources, you were willing to cheat on me and hurt me. When you found out I actually had significant wealth, you wanted to stay. The only variable that changed was how much money you thought I could give you." He flinched at my words, but he didn't deny them. "You're right," he said quietly. "I was selfish, I was shallow, I was everything you said I was." "Then we have no more to discuss," I said, and I turned away. "Wait," he said, "please, I just want you to know that I'm sorry. I was a different person. I was desperate and angry, and I took it out on you. I regret it. I regret everything." I turned back to face him. Here's what I know about regret. Genuine regret comes from understanding why you did something wrong, learning from it, and changing yourself. You're not sorry because you felt bad about what you did to me. You're sorry because I ended up successful without you, and you ended up unsuccessful without me. That's not regret, that's resentment. "Victoria, "And you hurt me," I continued. "You cheated on me, you hit me, you threatened to kill me and my mother. No apology you could ever offer would be sufficient to undo that. The best thing you can do now is stay out of my life and figure out how to be a better person. Not for me, for yourself, and for the next person you meet." He looked at me with eyes that were filled with something that might have been regret or might have been self-pity. I couldn't tell anymore. I didn't care enough to determine which it was. "Goodbye, Marcus," I said, and I walked away from him for the last time. After that encounter, I found myself thinking a lot about my mother and about the choice she had made to keep her wealth hidden from me. I had initially resented it. I had felt like she had lied to me, that she had deliberately kept me in the dark about a crucial part of her life. But as I ran the company and as I understood more about her strategy, I began to see it differently. My mother hadn't hidden her wealth to control me, she had hidden it to protect me, and she was right to do so. If I had known about Meridian and the $300 million valuation, everything would have been different. I would have been paralyzed by the weight of that inheritance. I would have felt obliged to work for the company, to take it over, to prove myself worthy of it. Instead, I had been free to choose my own path. I had worked for a nonprofit because that's what I cared about. I had fallen in love with someone, or thought I had, because something about him seemed genuine in the moment. My mother had given me the gift of not knowing, she had given me the gift of normal, and that gift had allowed me to develop into a real person, not just an heiress. When I did eventually take over the company, I did it not out of obligation, but out of genuine desire to continue her legacy, and that made all the difference. I'm now 31 years old. I run Meridian Global Industries, which is now valued at $500 million. I employ over 10,000 people. I've been named one of the most influential women in business by multiple publications, and I'm finally, actually, happy. Not in a romantic way. I'm not married, and I'm in no rush to be. I've learned that romantic love is not the same as genuine connection, and I'm not willing to compromise my peace for the sake of companionship. But I'm happy in the way my mother was happy. I'm fulfilled by the work I do. I'm satisfied by the impact I have. I'm content with who I am and how I spend my time. I think about Marcus occasionally. I heard through mutual acquaintances that he eventually moved to Florida and got involved in some kind of real estate scheme that went sideways. He's no longer someone who registers on my radar. But I think about my mother constantly. I understand now why she made the choices she did. I understand why she kept her wealth private. I understand why she was skeptical of Marcus. She wasn't being paranoid or controlling, she was being protective in the way only a mother can be. And she was right. If you're listening to this story, I want to tell you something. Be cautious about love. Not so cautious that you never allow yourself to fall, that would be its own kind of tragedy. But be cautious in the sense that you maintain your own identity, your own independence, your own foundation. If someone loves you, they will love you without needing to control you. They will support your autonomy. They will celebrate your success. They will not make you feel small. If someone is only interested in you because of your money or your status or what you can provide for them, that is not love. That is predation, and you need to be willing to walk away from it no matter how long you've been invested. I was lucky. I had my mother to help me see through Marcus's facade. I had resources to leave safely. I had the opportunity to rebuild. Not everyone has those things, but everyone has the right to demand respect in their relationships. Everyone has the right to be treated with kindness and dignity, and everyone has the right to leave. One more thing, don't assume you know someone's story based on what you can see. My mother was worth $300 million, and nobody knew it. She was one of the most powerful women in America, and she moved through the world invisibly. The most extraordinary people are often the quietest. The most successful often have the least to prove. Don't be fooled by flash and confidence and displays of wealth. These are often the markers of insecurity, not success. Look instead for substance. Look for integrity. Look for the kind of success that comes from building something real, not from collecting things. That's the kind of success that matters. My mother's legacy isn't just the company she built, it's not just the money or the patents or the technologies that are making the world better. Her real legacy is the lesson she taught me, that true power doesn't need to announce itself, that real wealth is built slowly through discipline and integrity, that the people worth having in your life are the ones who would be there even if you had nothing. I've carried that lesson into everything I do. I've built a company that cares about profit, but also about purpose. I've created policies that value people over productivity. I've donated hundreds of millions of dollars to causes I care about. And I've become the kind of woman my mother was, someone who has power but doesn't need to broadcast it, someone who has wealth but doesn't need to flaunt it, someone who has built something real that will outlast her. When I die, and I will die eventually, as all mortals do, Meridian Global Industries will continue. It will continue because I've built a company that's bigger than any one person. I've built a legacy that matters. And that is what my mother taught me to value. The greatest gift you can give someone is the freedom to know you as you really are, not as a collection of your assets and accomplishments. Hide what you have until they've proven they want you, not your money. Because love that is conditional on wealth is not love, it's a transaction, and transactions can be renegotiated, canceled, and walked away from. But real love should be able to survive the loss of everything else.